You guys, I did it. I didn't think it was going to happen, but it did. And so I did it. What did we do? Well, let me tell you. Coronado is sold. We sold the Coconado. What are you doing? Everyone's saying, what are you doing? You built this truck, you put all this work into it, and you're selling it. What are you doing to the Coconado? Whoa. Where's the running boards? Where's the sweet toolboxes? Where's the fenders? Who authorized all this work? Who's in charge of this and what are they doing? Rob, what in the world? What have you done?
Taking her apart. Taking her apart.
She's coming down, man. Let me tell you the tale. I'll fill you guys in on how in the world all this came about. Look at all that frame. My goodness. You want to talk about a stretched out looking truck? Whew. Oh, Coconado. Okay, so let me tell you what happened, all right? I'm going to try to keep it as concise as possible in a nutshell. Ooh, look at that. So I get a call from a friend whose stepdad came across the videos on YouTube of putting the old Coconado together. He's from right here where I live. And he goes, hey, I came across these videos. It looks like they did this truck right. You can see everything they did. It was transparent. It was open. This looks good. Would he ever sell that truck? So my friend calls me up and he's like, hey, so-and-so wants to buy the Coconado. And I was like, man, really? So we got together and I told him, I've been pretty transparent on this truck. In fact, I haven't walked you through the exact numbers, but just so you know out there, and this is a funny thing because I've mentioned to a few people what it's going to take to buy that truck. And because I've had a few people inquire and ask, and the response has been, oh yeah, you're dreaming, bud, And I'm like, well, have you ever built a truck? Have you not overhauled a truck or not replaced the transmission, but have you ever actually put a truck together from front to back where you're doing engine, clutch, transmission, AC work, rear ends, all this stuff. And on top of doing that, making it a performance built engine, not just run of the mill stock everything, but actually turning this into a performance engine and then taking the truck out and putting it through the paces, breaking it in, making sure that everything's done and squared away before it leaves the place. Has anyone done that? There's a few out there, some of you listening have. And if you have, and if you've done it in the last 2 or 3 years, you'll know what I'm talking about. Between purchase price of this truck and the cost to rebuild the engine, legitimately out of frame, completely do all the stuff Joe did on it, to get that transmission swap. You remember we went from the 10-speed to the 18. So you're not getting a core exchange for that. Putting this rear end in, this front differential. We did all brakes and drums. We did all the suspension bushings and all this stuff. Parts, I have receipts, like in a pile, I have receipts for $90,000, just in a tidy little pile, okay? That's what it costs to buy that truck, bring it home, do it all. Here's the receipts, okay? So when you tell people what you need, they're like, well, that's I'm going to go in because it's getting a little breezy out here. That's crazy, man. That's a $60,000, $70,000 truck all day long. And you're like, well, that can't be because this is what it costs to build it. So I appreciate your feelings on the matter, but that's just not it. No, you can't build a truck for $60,000 or $70,000. You can overhaul and you can buy a truck and overhaul it and have, $60,000 into it, $70,000 maybe. But to do all the rest of the work, not a chance. You just can't. The whole purpose in buying this Coconado was to fix it, clean it up, make it good, and sell it. However, we got into the deep end on it because it had some issues that were hidden, right? And the more we dug, the more we're just like, no, let's just keep doing it right. And by doing it right, it put us into that $90,000 investment situation. And I never thought that I would sell it because you'd have to find just the right buyer. One, you have to find somebody who understands what it costs to build a truck. And two, you have to find someone in this current trucking economy. You have to find someone that has work that is somewhat recession proof. And this guy does with what he does with his trucking. Yeah, he's a Freightliner guy. He's loved Freightliners, had Freightliners for the last almost 20 years, 15 years, and knows them and appreciates them. And he said, it's good. It's just what I need. It's right here. And he goes, best of all, I know it. Like, I know it. You guys, I've gone out and I think I'm just a hair under 30,000 miles, I believe, is what, is that right? Anyway, it's close to that, is what we put on this. However, there's one thing that he wanted, that he needed, that I had to throw in to make this deal work. Let me show you. You see, in Montana, it's very important in a lot of situations that you have a lift axle. Now, this lift axle right here is a Watson-Chalin lift axle. They were one of the first manufactured lift axle outfits on the scene, really pumping them out 10, 12 years ago. And I came across two of these. I needed one for my Peterbilt cab over. The guy had two, gave me a ripping deal. So I put one on the Peterbilt, and the second one I just have kept. And here it is. So when the buyer of the Coconado said, man, I'd really like a lift axle, I have one, and for the kind of money that you're going to be paying for this truck, I'll throw it in. Let's throw the lift axle, the axle itself, into the deal. And he said, okay, you know anyone that can put it on? Because his mechanic he uses a slam. He's an ag mechanic, and it's harvest time and whatnot here. So he's slammed doing that. And I talked to Big Rob, and of course Big Rob's always like, well, yeah, no, nothing, that piece of cake. We'll just. And I'm like, you sure? Oh yeah, it's no big deal. He's laughing, but that's about the truth. So let me show you what we've had to do to the old Coke here. You remember that the Coconado, of course, Coronados have the full running board that goes all the way and turns into the built-in toolbox and fender. Of course, we can't have any of that here if we are putting a lift axle in. So Rob went ahead this morning while I was doing some tractor work, cut the steps. So we got more of the classic look now, just the full exposed tank with just steps. Here's where the axle is going to bolt in. So steps are gone. We're going to back the truck. We're going to back it out of the shop so we can just slide that axle sideways. Shop's a little tight here with the Volvo in here still. So we're going to slide that axle under, and then we'll kind of get it lifted in position and chain it up so we can pull the truck back in the shop, and then get into all the intricacies like, the air dryer's right here. That air tank's right there. We might have to shuffle things around a little bit to make it all fit right. Another little thing we did, you guys see this? I was always planning on painting the fenders because they had some serious rock chip action, just as what they had. Some damage there, so I always was going to paint these this whole time, and I let the guy know and said, hey, look, I'm going to paint the fenders regardless before I either drive this truck myself more or when I sell it. And so I said, if you have a specific color you want, let me know. And he chose a brown, which actually goes really well with the cream. It's not doing it justice because we still got to wash everything down and clean and polish, get that done. But anyway, nice brown fenders, got rid of the rock chips. Looks pretty sharp, brown and cream. You can't beat that. Rob stuck a visor on, just got the lights installed last night and put up in there. So she's visored up and looking pretty clean with those tall, skinny stacks, which is really the style nowadays. The 7-8-inch stacks, they're not as popular as they once were. What's that? It does. It fits the truck, fits the theme of this truck really well. So anyway, that's what we're up to. We're going to get that thing in and try to get this thing buttoned up, because I have another project that we're going to start. All right, here's what we got. All this frame, all this space. Got to slide this axle underneath there. So we got a jack under each side. We're just going to do the double-double. A little swip and a swang. And yeah, this will lift up easy by hand. Just going to try to walk it in there and see if we got the room to clear the drive line. It hangs down below the frame just a hair. Yeah, we'll have to come down quite a bit, won't we? All right, so we have conquered our challenges. We're real close on the drive line, but it actually shimmies underneath there. We got the brake chamber, the fender brackets under there.
That might be fine.
That we're looking at is going to be that air tank. Probably something we're going to have to let loose and try to slide forward. We do have a little room to slide forward there. Just whether or not it's going to be enough room, that's the question. So we got to get that bracket on the other side of that air tank over there. We're hoping just to get it over there enough that we can lift it up, strap it to the frame, and then get it back in the shop where we have access to easier toolage and such. Okay, so the buyer just came out, dropped in to see how things was coming along. I tell you, it's nerve-wracking. It's nerve-wracking for me because, you know, I've never put so much into a truck. 1000% confident in everything about it. Love the truck. It's just running better and better. Strong. When I say better and better, I mean the engine's getting stronger with every trip because it's working through that break-in process up to 50,000 miles, right? But it's just, you know, it's just one of those things. You're like, I want it. I want to be sure that the buyer, you know, feels like they're getting something, you know, really, really good, something really strong, really reliable. All right, she's in place, you guys. Sort of. I mean, by in place, I mean suspended from the frame. We got it up just enough. It's gonna fit in here pretty well. We got to get in here. This bracket right here is gonna end up basically being right here. We're gonna have to pull this huck out. I think this will clear. Rough measurements are showing it'll maybe clear this, maybe not. So we may end up having to pull this huck as well and incorporate those new bolts into this bracket, which is fine. There's nothing wrong with that. We're gonna have to tweak our air tank, either get a shorter air tank because it's sticking. The air tank can't go past the fuel tank, basically, is what we got. And there's not a lot of room back up in there to slide it forward much. Got about 6 inches. Don't know if that's going to be enough. So we may end up having to get a shorter air tank, which will lose us some capacity, but you piggyback these air tanks together and we gain some capacity back because this lift axle has its extra tank to help inflate these bags quickly. Right, there's the tank. Long old bugger, look at that thing. Whew. Tank is out. It's actually fitting in really well. The width of the frame of this lift axle is going to be real nice and tight. Should fit in. So then the next question is, what is your spread? Spread on a truck is the distance between axles, from center of the back axle, you know, to center of that. That would be referred to as the spread, okay? And they have weight ratios, weight laws. You know, you can have so many axles within so many feet, and then they give you a weight rating according to that formula. So I'll explain this to you real quick. So right here, we've got the back drive axle and we've got our new lift axle, okay? So when the DOT or the state you're traveling through is determining how much weight you can haul, they want to know what is the distance between the center of that hub right there and the center of that hub right there, okay? And the greater that distance, the greater the spread, the more weight they're going to allow you to haul. And here's how they break down, all right? Currently, right now, from the back drive axle right there to the center of our lift axle where it's going to sit, it's 8 feet and 2 inches, okay? So the weight formula allows this truck to haul 42,000 pounds on your drive axles back here with that down on the ground. So currently it's only good for 34,000, but we're going to make it so it can do 42,000, all right? To get more weight, a better weight rating, we would need to have a greater spread, okay? This would have to go from 8 feet 2 inches to 8 feet 6 inches. They round to the nearest foot, okay? So because this is 8 feet 2 inches, they're gonna round that to an 8-foot spread. DOT officer says, you have an 8-foot spread, you're good for 42,000 pounds. If this was 8 feet 6 inches, he would say you have a 9-foot spread, you're good for 40,750 pounds. If this was 9 feet 6 inches, they would say you have a 10-foot spread, you're now good for 43,500 pounds. Okay, so every foot that you grow there, you get another 750 pounds. Are we gonna go any more than this? No, and let me explain this to you. And this is a lesson that I learned early on in trucking. You have to just evaluate what's worth it and what's not. So in order for us with this axle to get a greater spread, to get up to a 9-foot spread, we are going to have to figure out a way to get this mount tucked up into the truck right here, right? We need to get 4 more inches. We don't have 4 inches, look at that. It is gonna be right dead even with the tank. So we don't have a way to get easily get any more spread. If we wanted more spread, what we would have to do is get some spacer brackets. We'd have to unbolt the fuel tanks, get some spacer brackets made, and put some like 4-inch spacers between the tank mount and the frame. That would move the tanks out more towards the road, and it would allow us to slide this alongside of the tank and get back in there. It's a lot of work. And for 750 more pounds of payload, when I first started trucking, I went through great lengths to get the 10-foot spread because that gives you the maximum amount, right? Like, oh yeah, that's like the biggest spread you're gonna get on a lift axle for a truck within reason. And I even at one time stretched a frame so that I could get that 10-foot spread. It was like a $6,000 bill, and I was still putting an old used lift axle on. I put all that money into it just to get that little bit of extra weight. Well, I've learned over time, especially hauling cows, it's not worth it. Just make a spread that makes your 3 axles look really even. And right now we're within 2 inches of having all 3 axles evenly spaced. Just get that, put it in. Don't go through all this crazy modifications and stretching and moving tanks. Or some guys will even chop their fuel tanks, cut a section out of them and make them small capacity and weld them back together so that they can create more frame space. It's all this time, money, effort, all for 750 pounds, okay? So if you're hauling cattle, you know, everybody knows this. The weigh stations are gonna give you about 800 to 1,000 pounds of overage and let you go, especially when you're hauling cows, okay? So this is good for 42,000 as it sits. The scales are gonna let us go 43,000. And remember, cows shrink, right? Cows shrink. So let's go ahead and load 43.5, 44,000. Those cattle are gonna shrink really fast. And within a few hours, you're gonna be within the legal spec that they're gonna want you to be on the scale anyway. So I learned, this was through hard experience. I wasted a lot of money when I was young in my business, going through great lengths to get the spread. And as I truck more, they just learned it ain't worth it. So this job, especially this guy's trucking around here locally, he's hardly gonna be crossing scales. Every once in a while he'll encounter a scale, but it's very rare. So he just wants to be pretty well covered. 42,000 is gonna still give him a really big payload because this truck is so light and lighter now that we took the extra stuff off the side. We did add the axle, makes it heavier, but we're getting this great payload addition. So anyway, that's a quick walkthrough on what we're looking at for spreads and formulas and whatnot. This is gonna bolt on really easy. It's gonna be very painless. It's not gonna cost this guy very much money to have us install this because we're not making very many modifications. Just got back from town. This guy's been busy. Had to run into the bank and do a few things. I get back and look here. She's in place. This isn't the right wheel and tire that'll go on it. This is a 19.5, so it's a little bit smaller. We'll have a 22.5 with a low pro tire there. Fender will go on. We'll put a little trimmed quarter fender right here as well to help keep a little of the mud flow down. But check it out. It's there. Airbag's in place. So here's where we ended up. Remember me talking about this was the air dryer, that was an air dryer. Took that out thinking we'd have to have it gone. But with this thing totally in place and butted up against the bottom of the frame, looks like we might just have to trim a washer flat to kind of have a specialized washer. But that'll go back, so that'll give us our 2 air dryer holders. And if you zoom in there, you'll see that's a 3rd hole. So we'll end up with three bolts holding on the air dryer, which will be more than enough and good there. So we didn't show you this too. See, there's a little gap. There's about 1 inch gap between the back of the tank and the front of the lift axle assembly right there. See that? That's okay, because again, our spread is not affected by how far forward. We're like 8 feet, 1 inch spread, right? Instead of 8 feet, 2 inches. The 1 inch isn't gonna change any of our weight ratings. So we're gonna leave it as it is. That way we can utilize a really good factory drilled hole. We'll make 2 more. By we, I mean Rob. I gotta run down to go pick up another project tomorrow. Shh, don't tell you guys. I'm supposed to keep it a secret. So anyway, we'll drill 2 holes there. You'll have 3 on each side, some good hefty bolts holding that. Airbag pedestal gets one. Then we'll have a day's worth of plumbing work. Good thing is I have this exact same axle and same setup on my Peterbilt cab over. So any questions we have about routing and airflow, we can go look at that one. But we got to get that plumbing done, and then we got to figure out what to do on that air tank, whether we're gonna, what do you think, trim it or get us a new one that's shorter?
Oh no.
So those of you that weld on a used air tank, would you trust yourself to put a weld on it that's good enough to be airtight for many years? Or for the sake of doing it technically, maybe not right, but more properly, would you just go get a brand new tank from Freightliner that's hopefully shorter, 14, 16 inches shorter than that one? We'll see. We haven't decided yet. All right, as usual, really looking like a true mechanic. I honestly just do that for the videos. I never get dirty. Axle's in. It's all plumbed up. Just fired the truck up for the first time. Gonna check some things over. Look for some air leaks. See what we've done wrong. I would be really surprised if there's not a mistake with the plumbing. It needs to be swapped. If there's no mistake, all the better. But after we air it up and make sure it's functional, I'll shut the truck off and walk you through. All right, up she came. We aired it up. Truck aired up, cab aired up. Looky there. Oh. Putting the controller in here. So we're gonna push that in. Down she goes. Those airbags deflate. Those airbags inflate. And since there's no trailer on it, it'll lift the whole entire semi up off the ground just about. Rob's setting up the brakes over there. I'm going to kind of show you. It's going to be a little tough because of the darkness, but oh no, you can see right there. So that's an air tank. If you remember earlier, that air tank was in the way. I agonized over what to do with it, and then it clicked about taking it in and having the metal shop just go ahead and weld it professionally. So they did that. That thing is like a butte. We shortened it about 12 inches. So because the lift axle has brakes on it, we had to tee in and get access to the brake line. So this comes from the cab right here. When you push on your pedal, it sends a little air into this valve, which releases some air into the brake lines that activate your brakes. So we teed into that, ran it up here into the lift axle. Has a similar controller. Where do they go? Oh, down there. Has a similar controller right there. See, same deal. This goes in, activates, pushes the valve down that sends air out to each one of the wheels to activate the brakes. Then you have two different sets of airbags, okay? You have two. You have what's called your ride bags, which are the bags that allow the axle to ride on the ground. And then you have your lift bags, all right? Let me show you. These triple bellows, they're called, pancake bags. These are your ride bags. So they come out of here, right? We run a T, because one has to come across and tee into this, and the other one has to go where it can get air supplied to it. So when we flick the switch, air comes down into here, whoosh, goes ahead and fills these airbags up. And it's the exact same deal for, these are called the lift bags. They're these little tiny little buddies. And they're inflated right now because the axle's up. So when you want the axle up, these inflate via this line that also tees in a similar fashion. See down under there? They tee together and they also go up. Ran everything along the frame, came up, gotta tidy a couple of these things still to keep them from rubbing any holes. But ran them up through the floor. They come into the box here, into the back of the controller. Rob's got a bracket built, so this can come down and be in here. Technically, I guess it's illegal to have this in your cab because you can play with your air pressure, which the DOT don't like when you do that on the fly. So there it is.